had a good bank holiday weekend, even if it has been stuck indoors. I've been trying to make the most of it. Normally at this time of year, we'd be out and about, visiting places, going to museums. I had a holiday booked. I was supposed to be away this weekend. Obviously, none of that's happening for most of us. So I've tried to make something productive out of this weekend, and I've revisited a project that I started a couple of years ago, and has been on a slow simmer ever since. That's my Zulu Wars project. So I painted a lot of stuff for that a couple of years ago, and then I did a few more models about a year ago during the painting challenge, and I've been revisiting it and doing a little bit more painting for it. So inspiration, let's start off with the inspiration for this is this old set of rules. 1974, I found this copy on a bring and buy a couple of years ago, and I was well chuffed. But this is actually the basis of a set of rules that Posty uses in the Shed of War, and they work really well. Now these rules are a bit too complicated for my liking. The modern sensibilities, we want smoother running and simpler games. This has got a lot of detail in, but a pleasure to read because it's so well researched. You can tell a lot of work has gone into producing these rules, and they might not be as colourful and as glossy as modern rule sets. Well worth checking out because the amount of work and research that's going into these is staggering, and I really highly recommend them. So I've used these as the basis of a set of rules that I'm trying to write, and writing my own set of rules has given me a whole new appreciation for how hard it is, particularly as I did a little bit of playtesting the other day, and I realised there's a great chunk of my rules that I've written that need to be reworked over, and there's other areas where I've just skipped stuff entirely and I need to give some serious thought. It's been a fun and enjoyable process. I'm never really going to get an opportunity to spend so much time thinking about rules like this again. So like I say, while I may not be getting out and about this bank holiday weekend, I have been trying to do something useful and positive with that time. So before I move on to a little bit of video that I shot, I just wanted to talk about sources of inspiration for this sort of thing. So I would always say, I would recommend, if you've never done Zulu Wars before and you want to start completely fresh, check out this. This book is excellent. Really good primer on a background, a little bit of history, information about units, what happened, major battles, but also information about different manufacturers, different types of war games that you can have, so everything from skirmish up to big battles and so on. And a really good primer before you start going on and spending money on lots of other books. So if you just want an overview, and obviously it's written with the wargamer in mind, so well worth looking at. That's by Daniel Mersey, by the way. Now I've got a load of other books. I could show you loads of them, but I won't get them all out now. But I would obviously always recommend any of Osprey's. Now, loads of lovely colour prints. There's a lot of titles to select from. Very well researched, everything you come to expect from an Osprey. Highly recommended. I refer to these all the time for inspiration. So definitely some Ospreys. So that's sort of like the background to how this project sort of kicked off a couple of years ago. And today I've been painting up some Sappers, some British engineers. I've had these models primed and sat on my painting desk for a long time, and I finally got around to doing them today. And I shot a little bit of video just to show some of the process, so not the whole thing, but I've just shown you that how I block paint the figures, do a little bit of detailing, and then a short bit of video on actually inking them. And that for me is the key to doing 6mm. People often go on about how on earth do you see 6mm figures, and let's face it, my eyes aren't as young as they used to be, and for me painting 6mm isn't about massive amounts of detail, it's impressionistic. So it's blocks of colour as neatly as possible, but don't worry too much about that. And then the ink adds nice shading and really tidies up the model for you at the end. And I think all of the 6mm stuff I do in whatever period it is, that's basically my technique. I block paint as neatly as I can, and then I ink wash. And then there's a little bit of work goes into the basing, but essentially that is the process. So here's a little bit of video just to show you how I tackle 6mm figures, and I promise you, if I can do it, anybody can. Today's painting project is going back to my 6mm Zulu Wars project, and these little fellas from Bacchus have been sitting on my painting table for quite a while. I actually primed them probably a year and a half ago, and I keep putting off doing them. So Sappers or Engineers by Bacchus. As you can see, I'm doing real basic colours, so just blobs of colour really. I've gone for a brighter blue than the normal uniform, and a completely white shirt, and I'll put in more detail. I'll do the wooden wheelbarrows and the handles of the picks and the metal heads and so on. I'll get progressively more detail, all the flesh and so on, but it's not going to be highly accurate, because what I do is I usually end with a dark ink wash. I actually use Winsor & Newton ink. So there you go, Winsor & Newton Peat Brown, and that produces a very pleasing darkening effect. It mutes the colours, it shows up a lot of the detail, and that harsh shadow that ink gives looks really good at 6mm. You need high contrast at this scale for them to be able to stand out on the games table, which is another reason why I've gone for the brighter blue. It gets muted when you ink it, but it's still brighter than it really ought to be, but the colours stand out nicely on the table at this scale. So I'll show you some photos in a second of the finished project, but for the moment I'm going to go and get back to doing some painting. So having finished block painting these figures, so you can see that I've painted in the trousers and the white shirts, done the flesh, done all the woodwork, painted their hair on. Really simple, not highly accurate. There's a little bit, I've gone round and I've tidied them up a little bit, but basically block painting these tiny little figures. They're only 7mm overall, so 6mm foot to eye. But there's a lot of detailing on these little Bacchus figures. They've got quite nice crevices and detailing in the metalwork, so they are ideal for ink washes to add some shading and detail into these figures. And I always use Winsor & Newton Peat Brown ink on my 6mm figures, because it's quite a dense pigment, and when you brush it on, it settles nicely into the crevices without reducing the colour or disdaining the other colours of the block painting too badly. So you don't end up with brown shirts, you end up with white shirts but with black or dark brown creases in them, which is exactly what you want. It's showing up the detailing on these little figures. So here's what I do. So literally load the brush up, plenty of ink, slap it on, try and get it on all the surface and let it find its own creases. And you might need to sort of draw off some of the ink that's gone into between the legs and things like that. You need to break that surface tension, but generally what you're doing is you're letting the ink find its own location. So just slap it all over the figure and it will settle into the creases of the model and create those nice shades. So it looks better when it dries. So basically I won't touch this again. I will let this ink settle into those creases and crevices and just let it dry. If you try and muck around with it, all you'll end up doing is ruining the look. So it's as simple as that. I'm going to do the rest of these, leave them to dry, and then I'll show you a quick picture of the finished figures, just ready for me to cut them up and put them onto their bases and finish the base work on them. So when the figures finally dried, the ink had finally dried, I gave them several coats of varnish. My usual method is to give them a couple of gloss coats and then a couple of dull coats. That means you get a nice strong covering to protect the figures, protect the paintwork so it don't rub off when you're handling them. I then trimmed the figures individually off their sprues so that they can be positioned in little scenes on the bases, and then I super glue them usually to the little MDF bases, and then for this particular project I'm also filling between the figures with some brown ready mixed wood filler. It means it doesn't have to be painted, it's already the right colour. And then literally the last step will be just to add a little bit of flock and maybe the odd stone or two, and then just painting around the edges of the bases to neaten everything up, and that's it, job done. So here are the finished sappers. I've added grass and a few stones just to sort of finish off the bases, but I've effectively got here as a couple of companies worth of men busy digging away and building whatever ramparts their commanders decided needs to be built. Now all I need is some suitable rules for using them. Well, I hope you found those two short bits of video interesting. As I said earlier, if I can do 6mm figures, then anybody can. I don't have any particular skill. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. It's technique, not skill, that counts at 6mm. It's working through what can sometimes be quite a laborious process, particularly when you're doing thousands of Zulus, as I did. You get a working process going, a production line going, and you work your way through the various stages, and you try and keep them as neat as possible, but don't overly worry about it. And then the ink just gives a nice final finish. So I hope you found that interesting. As always, please check out my blog, Big Gilly's Miniature Adventures, at www.blmablog.com, or check out the Postage Rejects page on Facebook, links for which will be at the very end in the credits, and obviously leave your comments below in the comment section below, or visit my blog and leave comments there. I don't mind. I'm more than happy to chat to people about how I paint 6mm, what I've been doing with me Zulu Wars project, and I'll probably do a bit more, another video about the Zulu Wars project at a later date when I finally get my rules nailed down and finalised. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting, and as always, I just hope that you're all staying indoors and staying safe, staying well, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.